Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Today our conversation is on one aspect of the oil and gas industry, and that's the Nigeria local content. And I have here with me two gentlemen in the studio, both of them oil and gas sector analysts. Ademola Adedoyin to my far left, and to my immediate left is Zigzulu Okafor. Both of us, all of us have been having this conversation in the last couple of minutes. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for staying with me.
Thank you.
Well, just before we went on that quick break to catch our breath, Mr. Okafor, you were talking about the benefits,
Yes,
so to speak, of the local content law. I know there's still some more you want to talk about. Could you just, bring them up a little for us?
Yeah, what I was saying in essence is that Nigerian companies, Nigerian indigenous companies, contractors are beginning to do a whole lot of things in the oil and gas industry, and that's good for us. There are so many examples. Importantly, let me say this because that's what people don't talk about, and that's the legacy projects that the local content guarantees. For instance, when you have a major contract in the oil and gas industry, where, for instance, some of the indigenous companies may not be able to do that on their own, where the international oil companies, the big companies, are going to bid for this job, you have to take along with you a Nigerian partner to be able to bid for each job. And I'll give you an example. About in 2010, about June in 2010, when Total Upstream Nigeria Limited came up with the $3.8 billion Egina FPS project, about 4 companies came out to bid for this. But you see, 2 were immediately disqualified because they didn't have Nigerian content partners. It was only Samsung Heavy Industries and Hyundai Heavy Industries. They were able to bid for this job. And at the end of the day, Samsung, because it bid, it had Ladol as Nigerian content partner, was able to win this project. But there's something very significant here. Because of the Nigerian content factor, when this $3.8 billion project was won by Samsung, $412 million was set aside for Ladol, for the construction of a fabrication yard and the integration facility at Ladol. So you see, this is, it couldn't have been done before now. This job would have been done abroad. But this has to be done at Ladol yard at Takwa Bay here in Lagos. That way, you are giving job to Nigeria. You are increasing our developing our human capital, our capacity and capability, and increasing employment.
Well, let's talk about one aspect that is, I seem to talk about this every time I talk about any sector, financing. Now, that is one major concern of IOCs, that indigenous oil service companies do not have the financial capacity and expertise for the jobs in the industry. Now, has the experience of the last 4 years actually justified this fear?
Yeah, I would say that the experience of the last 4 years has actually shown that Nigeria and Nigerian government and Nigerians can actually handle this. And it's been handled in the most creative manner. Let me, just recently, about 2 weeks ago, at the Nigeria Oil and Gas Seminar in Abuja, even Mr. McWard, the Managing Director of Mobil Producing, commended NCDMB for providing funds that, that the indigenous oil service companies could access to the tune of about $10 billion. Okay, so what has happened now is that Nigeria Content Development and Monitoring Board has set aside some money, okay, under Nigeria Content Development Funds, which those funds are domiciled with the banks, and those funds will serve as guarantee for indigenous service companies to be able to access capital with which to work. And they've started accessing the funds. So the issue of finance has been able to, has achieved 2 things. One, indigenous oil service companies, now when they have the job, they can actually access funds. That's the first achievement it has been able to record. The second one is that it has been able to deepen activities in the banking sector. Because if the banks now have billions of dollars of such funds to keep, which ordinarily will have gone offshore before now, then you can see that activities in the banking sector are even being encouraged, and thereby indirectly creating more jobs and deepening the economy.
But do we have any idea? Oh, okay, you wanted to add something to that?
No, I needed to add that it's always easy for people, for these companies to say that indigenous companies are, financially are not capable of doing this job, but they're doing it. And I was just talking about Ladol and Samsung. And I said, in this job, don't forget, when they were bidding for this job, Each of them is expected to take its own financial responsibilities, distinctly. And they were able to do that. And when it pre-bidding, bidding for the job, I take, for instance, a company like Ladol, a company like Samsung, is the biggest company coming out of South Korea and one of the biggest corporate organizations in the world. So if you have to partner with them, there are a lot of compliances you have to go through. So you have to sign over 20 agreements. These are these things are done by local companies. And Ladol did all this meticulously. And two of them came together and were able to win that contract. So what I'm saying in essence is Nigerian companies, indigenous companies, have shown again and again that they are very capable, professionally and financially, to do some of these jobs, and they're still doing it.
But before you...
Let me buttress what he has said,
okay,
if you don't mind. You see a situation where, pick the case of Niger Dock, okay? Niger Dock has succeeded in building the first satellite fields development platform for mobile. And that is, we are talking of millions of dollars. And that is totally a Nigerian-owned company, Niger Dock. For the first, it's a record. 4 years ago, you wouldn't even have dreamt of a Nigerian company.
Yeah, but I was going to ask that, you talked about these funds that are, readily available. But how much of, these funds have indigenous companies been able to access? And how easy is it for them to access?
Let me just add a bit. No, it is very, let's see how it works. NCDMB gets this money, deposit them with Nigerian banks.
Where does he get the money from? From
1%. That's what
statutorily, they are entitled to 1% from oil companies and all that.
Yes. Okay. So this money is deposited with Nigerian banks. Now, they're not going to NCMB is not a lending firm. It's not going to give this money directly to the Nigerian indigenous companies. But when the Nigerian indigenous company goes to a bank to get money, to get facilities, they are able to get it because the monies of the NCDMB with the banks serves as a guarantee for these Nigerian companies. So that way, it's actually easy for them to get these facilities. So in a way, just like my friend said, this has continued to even strengthen the Nigerian banks doing this kind of, and by extension, even the Naira against some foreign currencies because of the activities of these indigenous companies as a result of Nigerian content.
But then you were going to say something, Ademola, on the fact that companies, there are a lot of indigenous companies that are actually accessing this fund. And I was going to ask, in terms of the amount of indigenous companies that we have, how many, easily access this fund?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to say so many indigenous service companies have accessed the fund. But what has happened is this. What NCDMB has done really is that it has put in place a system. Don't forget what I told you at the beginning of this conversation, that it is a long haul. It's not a one-dash race. Yes. So what they've done is that they've put in place some system that will make it possible. As a matter of fact, we learned that the NCDMB invited banks and told them that, look, this money is available. Once you are ready to deal with the indigenous oil service companies and all that, and even the indigenous oil service companies under the umbrella body, PETAN, Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, came up to say that, look, we started talking to the banks and NCDMB on how we can access these funds. So the process is on, and I think that perhaps in the next 1 year, 2 years, we'll be able to come around and say, hey, this is just working in the interest of Nigerian oil service companies. Yeah.
You will also see that, indeed, that the Nigerian indigenous service companies and all that, they are getting more and more financially very solid by the nature of jobs they are doing, recently. As I was talking, I was mentioning Lador before. I talk about Chevron, for instance. Chevron has built the largest FPSO in the world today. And, the final installation of that FPSO was done in a Nigerian company, Lador's facilities there at Takwa Bay. And today, the outcome of that, the Agbami deep water, produced about 250,000 barrels a day. And this completion of these facilities were done inside Lador fabrication yard at Takwa Bay. So you can't go into such things if you don't have the financial capacity, to face such, to take such responsibilities. So the fund from the NCDMB is doing a lot because that's Nigerian banks. It doesn't come easy for a Nigerian bank to give you facilities. They have to be sure, especially when the monies are like this. We are talking about billions of dollars.
So in other words, the law the way it is fine. There's no need to begin to think about amending the law anytime soon.
Well, I would not say that because I've always said that there are always room for improvement and all of that. And in fact, I was just saying that if 4 years down the line, we are recording 10% for manufacturing, okay, then we should know that there could be some areas where you could tinker with and encourage because that is the essence of it. If we are not manufacturing some of those equipment, some of those items that are needed by the oil service companies here, if we do not put in place a legislation that will compel those manufacturers to come in here and establish their factories and all of that, we may not be able to achieve all the benefits that this law can bring. So there are rooms for improvement.
For me, it's not actually about improving the law, but strict implementation of the law. I think that matters to me because we still have some gray areas.